Hi, I'm Chris Monck, owner of Highine Guitars, and welcome to another episode from the Luthier's Workbench. In this episode, I'm going to start what I expect will be about a three-part series where I'm going to talk about building one of my current designs, the Apollyon 7-string multiscale guitar. And in part one, I'm going to show how I make the body and the neck, and then in part two, the sanding and application of finish, and then in part three, the final assembly. So let's get started with part one. I always start one of my guitar builds by making the neck. In this case, I'll be using Eastern Rock Maple for the main neck shaft. After preparing the neck blank, I clamp it down to my CNC table and carve out the basic shape. Then I set the neck aside and focus on the fretboard. Here I'm cutting the slots and drilling the holes for the marker dots. A perfect 16-inch radius is carved using my CNC machine. After installing the truss rod, the fretboard is then glued and clamped into position on the neck. At this stage, the neck is still pretty rough, but I can set it aside now and start working on the body. For the top of this guitar, I'm going to use walnut, so I selected a nice board from my stash, which I'll resaw into a book match top. This is how the top looks after book matching with my bandsaw and then running it through the planer to get it nice and flat. The center gluing edge was run over my joiner blades, and then the two were clamped together with wood glue. While the book match top was drying, I selected a nice piece of mahogany for the main part of the body. After cutting two 7-inch wide, 18-inch long pieces from that board, I ran them through my planer and planed them down to a thickness of 1.5 inches. Next, I ran the gluing edges over the joiner blades to square them up. After gluing up the two mahogany boards, I put them in the clamps and let them sit overnight for the glue to dry. The next morning, I clamped the body blank down to the CNC machine and carved out the basic shape of the body. I cut the top separately because that allows me to cut hidden channels into the body before attaching the top. After the body and the top were cut out, the two were mated together with a lot of wood glue and a bunch of clamps. And this is where things stand at the end of part one. In the next part, I plan to sand the body and the neck and then apply a cool tung oil finish. So stay tuned.